There's changes afoot with the US tourist industry. There's a boycott. That there is. Now, you might have heard about the Canadian people boycotting the United States. It started with Jack Daniels, and it did, yes. Why you want to drink that shit for, I don't know. But anyway. Now, I admire the Canadian people. If you're a regular to this channel, you will already know that. They made the right decision regarding their elections and voted for Mark Carney to be their Prime Minister. Mark Carney has organised a little holiday trip for the King to visit Canada. You know, he might not be a royalist or what have you, but it does build relationships between Canada and the UK, who's going to help your trade. And when things are a little bit difficult because of Donald Trump, the US President dum-dum, because that's what he is, well, quite frankly, it's a good idea. You know, that is a good idea. Now, with Canada's lead, boycotting the United States, it's also was rubbing off on Europeans who were considering travelling to the United States, but with Donny's tariffs and constant threats against Europe, and then all the squit at the borders where you don't know whether or not you're going to even get into the country. There's no guarantee. And when you look at, you know, when your own governments are warning you about travelling to the United States, travel warnings, going to the United States, don't go there. You might, you might end up in a little room with a little silver blanket on the floor for like 7 or 8 hours. You might get probed. You don't know. So nasty will happen. And in fact, some people have been detained for not just a day, but weeks. One case that I know of, over a month. It's just immoral. Why would you want to go there? That's what I say. And that's what a lot of Europeans are saying. But there is a counter effect, you see. Many people who were considering going to the United States, booking the holidays, and many of them have actually cancelled if they've already booked a holiday, because they don't want to go there now. They're going to places like Mexico. They're going to places like Canada. And the Canadian people are choosing Mexico and, well, other destinations in Europe and what have you as well. But this is causing a massive shift, a huge shift in destinations. And how do you get to the destinations? Is by flights. So that is causing some issues for the airlines themselves, which I'll elaborate on in a moment. But there is something I want to point out. Now, if you do decide to go to Europe, I don't mean Russia, even though some of it is in Asia, Northern Asia. But, bear in mind there are anti-tourist protesting in Europe in certain areas, like, for instance, the Balearic Islands, Mallorca, for instance. There's a lot of, and also Barcelona and places like that, there's a lot of anti-tourist sentiment. And the reason for that is there's a lack of housing, and the Airbnbs, the properties that have been converted into like little hotels and stuff, have caused a huge amount of problems because the governments and the councils and what have you haven't helped to, well, they haven't built enough properties. No. Not for the civilians. They just build for holiday accommodation because they know that's where the readies are. That's where they make the money. So there is a hell of a lot of animosity. There really is. Now, the national governments, say for instance Spain, what have you, Madrid, they're quite happy to take the money, but not give it back. It sounds a bit like what's going on with the federal government and California, for instance, which is the 5th largest economy. They get less coming back that leaves California. Than what they make. Major contributors to the economy. Now, so there's problems in the Balearic Islands. You might think about your destination when booking your holidays. A little bit of advice for you, right? Because there is some problems here. As a whole, most places, will be absolutely no problems at all. All right. Now, Paris, for instance, doesn't have as much tourism as Mallorca. So you can imagine a little tiny island in the Balearics is getting absolutely hammered. And then you obviously got places like I mentioned about Barcelona. It's getting absolutely hammered with tourism. and it's causing problems. There's problems in Spain, there's problems in Portugal, there's problems in France, right across the board. And in many cases, many governments have been a bit more selective in how they're giving funding, grants for promotions for holiday destinations. You're more likely to get them now. Like, for instance, in France, they're holding back on promotions for Paris and saying go to something here instead, or there instead. Try this place. Do you know what I mean? Try different destinations instead of all the major ones, because that way you distribute the load. The tourism, the load of people visiting those areas, and it's, so you still got money coming in, but it's in different places, which makes a lot of sense. Now, there's also changes afoot as well regarding the EES, electronic something system. It's basically a passport system, so they know who enters and leaves the Schengen area of 29 countries. And that has been delayed and delayed and delayed. Well, they are now saying they're going to do a staged rollout of it. So bear that in mind as well. It could cause a little bit of a delay coming into Europe for your first time, because you're going to get your part. Instead, you're going to have to do all the photos and biometrics and the probing and all that sort of stuff. Okay, there's no probing, all right? It just got out of my mind. All right? But anyway, so just bear that in mind. But, there's wonderful places in Europe. I live in France, and I love the country. We've got a camper, we travel different places here. I haven't had much, we've gone to Italy a couple of times, but we haven't really felt a need to go anywhere else. Because there's so much stuff here. It's reaped with history. It really is. Fantastic places that there is. Loire Valley and place. It's great. It's great. Then you want to go on the coast, even the Bears area. Or if you want to go towards the Mediterranean, you got that around there. So there's lots of fantastic places to visit. It really is. It's a very interesting place, actually. So just bear that in mind. There is a little bit of animosity regarding tourism in the most busy, tourist hotspots. So just be careful of that. Not be careful, as I'm to be worried about it, but it's just, for a start, you might find it difficult to get a place, and some locals might not like it. Some will care. It's not a big deal. But anyway, so that was one of my points. But the thing is, also, the airlines are having to change their routes. So airline bosses are reacting to Europeans cutting US flights. Now, some of the largest airlines in Europe have sounded the alarm on declining demand for flights to the United States. Bosses at Delta, Air France, KLM and Lufthansa all noted that the transatlantic flights, which make up a significant chunk of their revenue, had become less popular in the first quarter of the Trump administration. Oh, it's damaging the United States tourism industry. It's worth 80-odd billion. Already it's lost 12.9 billion in revenue. That's a lot of money. The result is an anticipated US tourism reduction of revenue. I say 12.9 billion. Actually, they say 8.5 here. That's different figures, different places, I suppose. From international visitors in 2025, according to the data from Travel and Tour World. Airlines that previously made huge profit from transatlantic flights are now rerouting aircraft to regions with a more stable demand, such as Canada, Mexico and Brazil. Oh, of course, because Brazil's now also got a different president who's a socialist. Now, what to know? All right, the industry leaders have taken note of the decline in demand, and many top airline bosses are framing it as a context of the Trump administration's foreign policy, which has been more hostile towards Europe than its predecessors. Now, the Air France KLM Chief Executive Ben Smith, in a report on the company's first quarter, said, "We know there are a lot of customers that are holding back and buying tickets for a little more, they want more clarity on the border and things like that." And the company's CFO, Steven Zaat, also noted that the decline in demand was a match to the rise in demand for US flights to Europe in the same period. Donald Trump, you are destroying your tourism industry. And I know you don't care. But I'm sure the people who work in the tourism industry does. He's wrecking your country, he really is. Anyway, have you booked a recent holiday? Were you considering visiting the United States? Have you changed your mind? Are you going to carry on? Are you going to take the risk to get broke? Or have you held fire for the moment and say, I'm going to wait, see what happens, see what other horror stories are afoot. Pretty scary though, isn't it, really? If you want to travel over that border. I know I wouldn't, because I certainly would get arrested. Anyway, please boop the old like button, boop boop, and maybe subscribe to the channel, and a little bell icon, so then you get a warm fuzzy feeling in your pocket every time I upload another video, and I know you'll be excited about that. If you want to support the channel, you can do it on Patreon or buy us coffee, and I'll carry on sharing the madness that is Trump. The madness that is, well, the UK's political destination as well. It's not just the US. It's madness everywhere at the moment. Crazy. Toodaloo.